his place. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40! Can't wait! Let's go!
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to And One. It's your boy, Guardy3, and of course, Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
Doing well. Coming off a great holiday, coming off a slate of great NBA games on Christmas Day. So just ready to get into it.
Hey, that's fair enough. I hope you had a great Christmas. You get everything that you wanted for Christmas?
Always.
Oh, that is fair enough. I got some great gifts. Got a new toaster that I'm excited about. Some gift cards.
I'm with that.
Of course, how we start every show. Speaking of, toasters, they like to cook. Let's talk about some underrated players, past or present. So, Mo, let's get started with you, sir. Do you have any underrated players you want to bring up this week?
I'm going to go with Kevin Johnson, point guard for the Phoenix Suns. He was actually drafted by Cleveland at one point, and then he was traded to Phoenix. But I'm going to go with KJ. If you know KJ, he was at his peak probably late 80s through the early 90s. Incredible change of pace guard, can break you down off the dribble, explosive finisher, leaper, mid-range master. Like, his jump shot from 18 feet in was water. Like, he was as a complete an offensive player as you could have at that position. And he's one of maybe three guards that averaged over 22 points a game and 11 assists. It's a very short field when you look at the guards that have accomplished that throughout their careers. And he did something that very few guards can claim. In one playoff run, Kevin Johnson eliminated Magic Johnson and John Stockton in the same playoff run.
And let's not forget that dude has one of the nastiest posters of all time on Hakeem of all people. So
on Hakeem, and I would say this: I don't even think that's his best dunk. It's his most popular dunk because of who it was on. But if you go and look up Kevin Johnson and his dunks on big men, it's a who's who. Kevin Johnson was that explosive a basketball player, and I'll show you how revered he was. He made 3 All-Star teams, but he made 5 All-NBA teams. Think about that. A couple of years that he didn't make the All-Star team, he still made the All-NBA team. He was that guy.
That was a tough sequence to crack an All-NBA team to show you how impressive that was. Like, you're going up against Magic. You're going up against Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan. Even get into the late 90s, you can start throwing in like Gary Payton in there.
Payton, Stockton, yeah. It was very hard to crack that. But, I mean, Kevin Johnson was a beast. Like, he just was so underrated overall as a basketball player. And his skill set and his athleticism, that would have translated great to this NBA. I'm looking at Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose are arguably the 2 most athletic point guards we've ever seen. I would say Kevin Johnson has athleticism in that ballpark. The difference between Kevin Johnson and the other 2 is he was a much better shooter than either one of them. Kevin Johnson, he didn't have to work on his jump shot. His jump shot was money. Anything from 18 feet in, and it was money. So I just think that Kevin Johnson, when you look at his skill set and how it would translate to today's game, he would be a bigger star today than he was in the 90s.
That's valid. I always loved KJ, man. He was somebody that when I first started watching 90s basketball clips, he kept popping up, and I was like, who is this guy? I didn't realize anybody from Phoenix was doing this stuff, so.
Just fun to watch. And look, don't forget, obviously when Barkley came, he took them to a whole nother level. They were perennial contenders for the championship. Made it to the finals once, obviously, and lost the 6 games. But I think through time, we sometimes forget how gifted guys like Tim Hardaway were. I'm talking about Tim Hardaway before the injury, Penny Hardaway before his injuries, even a Kenny Anderson to a lesser degree. And then you got a guy like Kevin Johnson who kind of gets lost in the sauce when you forget how elite he was when he played.
No, absolutely. It's funny because my underrated player of the 90s, man, I went to the 90s too for my underrated player of the week. And I decided to go with Horace Grant.
That's a good one.
Horace Grant, people forget that if you want to argue big threes in Chicago, you can make a legit argument that Horace Grant was just as good, if not better, than Dennis Rodman. I think he is just that good. They were both high-level role players, and you can argue that Horace was right up there with them. And why did they have to go get Rodman? Because there was a Horace Grant-sized hole in that starting lineup in 95 when MJ came back. They realized, oh, Horace is gone. Now we need somebody. So my underrated player of the week, I'm going to go Horace Grant because that dude's impact, I think it was just a lot bigger than a lot of people realize. And he's just a fundamentally sound and really good player.
I like the Horace Grant pick, and I agree with it. And really, as a basketball player, I'm just talking about as a basketball player, he was a better basketball player than Dennis Rodman. Dennis was elite at two particular things, right? So out of this world rebounder, we know that, and an elite defender. Horace Grant was actually a very good defender in his own right, but I mean, not at the level of Dennis Rodman. I'm saying that Dennis excelled in those two areas. But if you look at the other areas, the ability to show, recover, Horace Grant had a reliable 12 to 15-foot jump shot. Like, he wasn't a one-trick pony. He made the All-NBA defensive team multiple times himself. So I do think that Horace Grant gets lost in history because he's not a household name. But he was a very good basketball player. And I don't know if I would call them a big three, but pretty close. I'd say it's pretty close to being a big three because Horace Grant was a big part of that first three-peat. And you're right. When he was gone, when NJ came back, the first thing they had to do is they had to go out and get somebody who could be comparative and bang with Horace Grant, who was now a member of the Orlando Magic. So, yeah, I believe that Horace Grant is one of the more underrated players in NBA history.
Yeah, it was tough for me because I only called him a big three is because I'm like, all right, people call, MJ, Pippen, and Rodman a big three. Well, I think Horace Grant is honestly right up there, just as talented as Rodman, if not better basketball player. So,
I agree.
I say, why not add him as the third member of the big three for that original three-peat?
Yeah, and maybe Rodman gets that because he's a bigger name, right? He's a bigger name. And he led the league in rebounding, I think, 7 years in a row. So he's a bigger name. But if you see them on the floor, Horace Grant's skill set more than holds up to Dennis Rodman's skill set. So, yeah, I'm not here to say that Horace Grant, like I said, not the greater defender, but there are other things that he could do on the floor that Dennis Rodman couldn't do.
Let's check the comments. We got Kyle Edwards. Welcome to the chat, Kyle. Always love seeing you. Kevin Johnson indeed was a bad man.
He was.
Reggie Miller, Crawley, Drexler, Moses Malone, Ray Allen. If you're going older guys.
No, I love all those names, but I wouldn't call them unsung because everybody knew who Drexler was. You knew who Moses Malone was. I think that Kevin Johnson is one of those people you forget about in the 90s. Another name that people don't talk about as much, not household name, Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice was 6'8", had range, could put it on the floor, but you don't hear people talk about Glenn Rice like that because his peak was short. He had like a 4 or 5 year run where he was one of the elite forwards in the NBA.
So, would you put Barkley in this convo? I don't think I think Barkley is properly rated. I don't think he's underrated or overrated, honestly.
No, because Charles is one of the all-time great players. I don't think he's underrated at all. It's funny because when they rank power forwards, a lot of people rank Karl Malone ahead of him. I think they were different. I think that in a half-court set, Karl Malone's skill set might have been more efficient, but I think that Barkley could do things Malone could never do. Barkley could snatch a rebound and go coast to coast and dunk on your whole team. Karl Malone couldn't handle the ball like that. He needed to have the ball brought to him. Barkley was unique. He was a 4, but he was only like about the size of a 2 guard height-wise, right? But he could create his own shot off the dribble. Barkley was not a one-trick pony. Like, there are no shortage of Charles Barkley dunking on people or snatching rebounds. So I don't think he's underrated at all.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only people that underrate him are the people that just value rings a little too highly. Like, you can still be great without winning a title. We've seen that throughout history. And I know, like, Shaq and them will give him crap for it, and that's fine. They're always doing it in good humor, but you'll see the people online be like, oh, Barkley's not over, like, 8 power forwards because he doesn't have a ring. Like, stop the Chuck disrespect, man. Now this is more my speed. Gerald Wallace.
Is that Gerald Wallace that used to play for like the Hornets?
Yeah, like Gerald Wallace played for the Bobcats.
Yeah. He had a couple of seasons where he was really nice. He was nice. He was nice. He's kind of, to me, he's ranked in that same level as Steven Jackson, right? They're kind of, you know what I'm saying? There's a certain way where you can acknowledge that those guys are nice ball players, but they were never quite stars, right? They were impact players. Gerald Wallace was an impact player. Steven Jackson was an impact player, but they weren't quite. Look at CJ McCallum and the numbers that he's put up over the years. And we talk about CJ like he's a star, and yet he's never made an all-star team, never. So I feel like Gerald Wallace is in that CJ McCallum / Steven Jackson. They're just guys that you knew could play, could help you win, but they weren't. They weren't quite stars.
No, absolutely. And then a Gerald Wallace pull only on the Add One podcast. You're right. Those are the kind of guys we love talking about here. Well, Kevin Martin had a really weird shooting form, but it was always dropping 20. I always loved Kevin Martin, honestly.
he had a weird shot, but he had an ability to get to the foul line. He knew how to draw contact, and he made a living off of that. So he had definitely a unique skill set, but he could get buckets.
Oh, absolutely. And then before we move on to the next topic, Kyle wanted to shout out Ricky Davis. Love the energy.
Not Ricky getting the cheap triple double when he threw the ball off the backboard to himself for a rebound. Come on, Ricky.
It's the only thing I remember Ricky Davis for was him trying to get himself a triple double.
I remember that. Like, come on, man.
All right. Now, of course, our first guy we want to talk about, Jonathan Kuminga. Me with the ball. Nobody's guarding me. And then he talks about how he just sometimes gets confused because he still feels the need to defer to the older guys. Mo, would you say that Jonathan Kuminga is unguardable, or is this just his confidence talking?
It's his confidence talking. He's not unguardable. He's guardable. But I like the confidence. If you watch Kuminga play, he's a rhythm player, and usually the thing about him, it all is contingent upon the pace of the game. When he's under control and he plays with pace, he can be an explosive athlete, especially attacking the basket. But when he plays too fast and he's reckless, he's not only forcing up bad shots, he's a turnover machine. So I think I've seen the good and I've seen the bad, and he's certainly not anywhere near being nobody can guard me. He hasn't earned that status yet, and I don't know if he ever will. I think he's a good player. I don't think I'll hold fast on what I said. If you're looking for him to become a star, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll be very good, but I think there is a ceiling on what he can ultimately be.
No, I agree. I do think that you need to have this level of confidence, just to be in the NBA in general. Let's be real. You need to think that nobody can guard me. But
I'm sure Evan Turner said that when he came in the league. I'm sure Evan Turner said, nobody can guard me, even though everybody could guard him, but he probably still thought like nobody can actually guard me. So
hey,
yeah.
To be fair, it's hard to pick him up when he's sitting at the end of the bench. So
I'm just saying. I understand the confidence. I do. If you're an NBA player, you should have a degree of confidence. Don't get me wrong. I have the utmost respect for any athlete that is playing basketball, football, baseball at the highest level. I'm with it. As far as Kuminga being that dude, I'm gonna say no. But what I will say is interesting. If Andrew Wiggins had Jonathan Kuminga's confidence, he'd make all NBA 5 years in a row.
that's fair. I do like Andrew Wiggins. There's just something wrong with him mentally. So if we could just swap him and Kuminga's mentality right now, that would
you'd have a hell of a player.
So would you say he's a younger Donovan Mitchell in his thought process and confidence at that age? Yeah, I mean, like
definitely in his thought process. Yeah,
thought process and confidence, absolutely. Kuminga, you can tell he thinks the world of himself, and he should.
Does. Now the difference is Donovan Mitchell really could blow by people, and very few people can stay in front of Donovan Mitchell. So I think they're different. They have different skill sets. It's interesting because Kuminga's a bigger man. He's about 6'8", 6'9", but he doesn't play big overall. Like, he's aggressive going to the basket, but you would think with his size and his leaping ability, he'd be a guy to get you 8 or 9 boards a game, and he gets you about 3. So not a good rebounder, an inconsistent defender. What he is a blueprint for potential and what the dream or the fantasy of potential could be, or the reality of what potential will be. I think Kuminga's going to have a good career, but he's not. I don't think he's going to have the kind of career that he thinks he's going to have, or his fans think he's going to have. I don't see star. I just don't. Now, could he put up numbers on a really bad team? Yeah, but that kind of goes back to another conversation we had before. When you're the guy that puts up numbers on a really bad team, that also says something about you too. Like, you're putting up numbers, but the team is still bad. Like, you don't affect winning. So I like Jonathan Kuminga. He's fun to watch, and I get it. Steve Kerr is at his wit's end, so he's trying all kind of different roster combinations, and I don't blame him, because you can't wait for Wiggins to snap out of it, because I honestly don't know if and when that's going to happen. He'll give you one of these blip games here and there, like their last game. I think Wiggins went for 20 plus, looked like himself, but then the next 3 or 4 games, he might combine for a total of 20 points. So I understand the impatience that Steve Kerr has, and we talked about this, right? They're constantly trying to extend what's left of Steph's prime, right? And a big part of that is they'd love Kuminga to step up and assert himself as a consistent third option. We'll see.
I'll say thanks for joining us, Chris. He says, say it with your chest out, Kuminga. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kyle says he's the last hope of a transition between the old guard and the next form of the Warriors going smoothly, and send him to Detroit. Championship.
Yeah, go ahead. Send him to Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit's down 5 with 38 seconds. So they look like they're about to set the record, unless Brooklyn really blows it. And of course, by the way, you said his name. He's like Beetlejuice, so now he's going to appear. Oh, I guess I didn't have that. Oh, I thought I had that slide already. Oh, all right. Well, anyway, we had Evan Turner. Evan Turner said that Giannis is not a top 5 player in the league. What are your thoughts on Mr. What are your thoughts on Evan Turner kind of saying that with confidence?
He can say a lot of things with confidence. I'm sure Evan Turner believes that Evan Turner was a hell of a basketball player. He probably says that with a lot of confidence. I don't share that confidence. What I'll say is this: of course, Giannis is one of the 5 best players in basketball. That's kind of crazy. If you want to tell me that Embiid is having a better season than he had last year, he is. And he looks like maybe because he heard all the chatter about him whining to win the last MVP, that he's just going to go out there and dominate to the point where there will be no dispute. He will win a back-to-back MVP. Right now, Embiid looks like the dude. But if you said 5 best players in the NBA and you don't think Giannis is one of them, I'm lost. Who are the 4 guys better? Like, you could say Embiid. You could put Joker out there. I would say Giannis is right there with those 2 guys. If you want to throw Luka into that mix, you can throw Luka into that mix. You can also throw Shea into that mix. I'm sure a lot of people have Jason Tatum into that mix. Here's what I'll say. Shea and Jason Tatum are more fluid scorers. They're more fluent with the basketball. Obviously, they're more guard-like. And yet, Jason Tatum's not a better basketball player than Giannis. He's not. I love Shea, but he's not a better basketball player than Giannis. He's more skilled, but he's not a better I'm talking about the impact that you have on the floor, on both ends of the floor. Giannis is by far one of the 3 best players in basketball. I'm okay if you say that Embiid and Joker are ahead of him right this moment, because the season is far from done. And like we said, it fluctuates. Giannis is going to have a couple of monster games, and before you know it, we're going to go, he's right back in the picture for MVP. So for anybody to actually look at basketball, look at this league, and I don't want you to just look at numbers, but I want you to look at the impact the player has on winning and losing. Of course, Giannis is one of the 5 best players in basketball. For Evan Turner to say that, like I said, look, opinions vary, and I respect everybody's opinion. I simply just disagree with him. I'm assuming that when he says Giannis is not top 5, that he does have Luka ahead of him. Maybe he has Tatum ahead of him as well. He might have Shea ahead of him. And these are all great players, by the way. You're not going to get a complaint from me. He might even have LeBron ahead of him in year 21. I wouldn't. I think that Giannis is he's at that peak in his career where he will be firmly entrenched as an MVP candidate probably for the next 6 or 7 years, and rightfully so. And I think that right now, it's no question that the 3 best players in basketball, they're all bigs. And that's the Joker, that's Embiid, and that's Giannis. And right now, nobody is playing better basketball than Joel Embiid, period. Not even Jason Tatum. As good a record as the Celtics have, he's not playing better basketball than Joel Embiid. Nobody is. Not right now.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I just don't understand how you can watch basketball. Like, I know he's not flashy. A lot of people call him a free throw merchant. He run and dunk man, gets all of his points in the paint. But, like, my response to that is always the simplest one, right? If you can get all your points in the paint, which is the most efficient look in basketball, why wouldn't you, like, try to do that every time and exploit that? He gets a lot of free throws because he goes inside a lot. He gets fouled a lot. But where Giannis really gets you, besides his offensive, and he's a great playmaker, is he has a range on defense like we've seen from few others in history, honestly. The way he covers ground, like, you blink and he's halfway across the court ready to do a chase down block, or even in the half court, the way he's just all of a sudden materializes at the rim to just block people. Like, you package all that together, and I don't see how you can leave that out of the top 3, let alone top 5. To me, that's just a little too wild for my liking.
It is, and it fits with the guy that said it, right? Evan Turner likes to make those kind of crazy takes. Look, Giannis is a force player. He plays with force, not unlike Shaq. Shaq wasn't making a living shooting jump shots. Shaq was making a living dominating the restricted area and dunking through people. And anybody could have said, well, I'd rather see what Shaq could do with a jump shot. Why? When you can't stop what he does best. Why would he change that? I'm the same way with Giannis. If you don't like him Euro stepping or attacking the rim or living in the restricted area, then stop him.
Right, and that's the thing I too, like Kyle just mentioned, and that's the thing I respect about him too, is he's always, his confidence doesn't really waver. Like he has his moments. Like a lot of people flash back to Game 5 and against Miami when he threw the ball away trying to get it to Chris. I think that's because he does understand he has limitations, and if he can shoot free throws or Chris Middleton can shoot a free throw, he's going to try to get that ball over to Chris. He understands that. But that doesn't mean he shies away from that end-of-game moment, taking the free throws. He's not Ben Simmons completely ducking the ball. So that's also something I'll always respect about Giannis is just he's always ready. He's always confident. And he doesn't shy away from the moment.
And I like that he's accountable. I respect that. He's very accountable.
See, rising stars today, Sengun, Banchero, SGA, Desmond Bane. I like all those guys that you put out there. I think SGA is obviously the cream of that crop by far. I think Banchero is on his way. Sengun is establishing himself. Desmond Bane is a really good player. But he is the Robin to John Morant's Batman. He's a very good basketball player. But he's better. He's a better player actually when Morant's on the floor. So I like Desmond Bane, love Banchero. That's a nice those names. Yeah, that is a bright future for the NBA. Especially when you look at how Banchero is playing early in his career in Sengun. I love it. It's a bright future. Throw in Chet Holmgren as well too. Throw in Chet. Throw in Wemby. There are some talented young guys out there in the NBA going forward. I think what I like about Desmond Bane is I think for his career, and it looks like he's very accepting of it, is I can see him being a very valuable member to a championship team, almost in the same vein that Chris Middleton was to the Bucks in 2021. The dude can score, so I could absolutely see him being a big part to a title team. He just strikes me more of a Robin more than a Batman, but that's okay. Another name I'd like to throw in here, Franz Wagner.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of him and his brother. I actually think Franz Wagner is the magic secret weapon. Everybody knows Banchero, but what you don't know is Franz Wagner is averaging almost as many points per game as Banchero is. And he's a more consistent shooter from three. So, look, I think the Magic are a fun, entertaining, up-and-coming team, and I love how they play defense. They play defense in a way that you don't see in today's NBA very often. And I want to know if that's sustainable over the breadth of an 82-game season. But they're very impressive. I think they're a player away from being like a real contender. But they're hitting the right arc right now. I think they need one more guy.
I agree. I think they need. I think they just need a superstar, somebody in the backcourt. I think their front court solidified. If they can get their hands on, say, I don't know, maybe like a top 10 to 12, maybe in the next couple of years, Kyrie falls apart, Luka gets unhappy, try to deal for him, or maybe on a lesser note, even maybe if Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland become available.
That was the first name that came to my mind. Donovan Mitchell was what I think because of what they do already. If you can put a Donovan Mitchell with Wagner and Banchero, that's a scary trio on a perimeter, man. To go with the team that plays the defense the way that they do. So, I really think they're that close. Not as close as OKC, but pretty close.
OKC will forever be close because anytime there's a star available, they can just, here's 10 first. It doesn't really matter to us. We still have another 30.
That nobody hoards picks like Sam Presti.
At this point, I'm convinced Sam Presti would probably trade his own family members for a second round pick if you got it.
Maybe.
He did. He gave his top. He did not. At least not that I saw. I'm guessing he means Giannis' highest point per game was 34, and he averaged 9. Yeah, I'm going to take Evan Turner's thoughts with a grain of salt. He's selling beach property in Colorado. Yep. He probably has KD in his top 5. Knowing Evan Turner, he seems to value flash skill more than anything, or skill. So I'm going to assume KD's up there too. So the league will be okay when LeBron retires. Don't worry, Kyle. I'm sure ESPN will still give you full LeBron coverage around the clock, but the league will be okay. I promise you.
They're going to give us full coverage even after he's retired. They're going to check on him, see what he's doing in his daily life.
We'll Bronny will be in the league, so he'll be at the stadium already, right? You want to say Julius Randle. I don't even think Julius Randle wants to say Julius Randle. Of course, Tyrese Maxey.
I'm a big Tyrese Maxey fan. I like his game a lot. I do. And he's made a big leap this season. Here's a crazy question that wouldn't have been that crazy before, but right now today, Brett, if you had a choice between Tyrese Maxey and Donovan Mitchell, who are you taking?
See, that is a little tougher than I thought, right? Because I almost want to say D-Mitch because he has a longer track record.
Sure, he's a little older.
However, I'm gonna go with Maxey on this one. He's younger. He's explosive. He's just as explosive. Last time I checked, he was still nailing over 40% from three. So this dude can space you out from the three and then uses insane burst to attack the rim. He's great at drawing free throws. There's nothing that this kid can't do, and he's younger. So I would absolutely take Tyrese Maxey to build around.
I would as well. And I'm a D-Mitch fan, but if you're giving me the choice between those two individuals, I'm taking Maxey.
You think D Fox needs another weapon on the Kings? I think they just need a defender. They need somebody to come in and can actually guard the point of attack because they don't have that at all in Sacramento.
I think they need a defender, and they need another guy that can create and get his own shot. When you look at their roster construction, the Keegan Murray, the second-year player, good player, but still not strong off the dribble. Jump shots been inconsistent. And then look at the rest of the roster. There's only one other guy that can get his own shot, and that's their sixth man, obviously. So I do think they need another shot creator. They need somebody other than De'Aaron Fox that can break the defense down when things aren't going well or when the offense isn't flowing. Because right now, everything is put on De'Aaron Fox. And if Sabonis was a traditional big where you could just throw it into him and say, get a bucket, then I wouldn't feel that way. But the truth is, if you actually know Sabonis' game, he's not really good in the post. He's good when he can catch the ball on the move and finish. But throw him in the post and let him go to work, it's not his strength. It just isn't. He's not that kind of big. He's more of a face-up big. So I think that they need another guy. They actually need somebody to come in and make Sabonis the third option.
Oh, I 100% agree. Kyle also says Maxey, and we will be talking more about Tyrese Maxey in a minute. But first, a word from our sponsors.
What's up, everybody? It's Cottrell Simpson with Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, where we're going to cover all things breaking news, sports related. We're going to preview games, and we're also going to give you our reaction to the games that have happened before. You can catch us on Wednesdays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if you miss us there, no worries. You can also catch us on Roku with Northeast Streaming Sports Productions from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Hey, and listen, if you're not into all sports and just NFL, we have Sideline to Sideline. That's on Thursday nights from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. We'll break down the NFL week, the Thursday night game, and we'll preview all NFL action.
And if you're like me and college football is your fix, tune in every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Coast to Coast College Football pregame show. We'll review the previous week's action, the day's biggest games. We'll give you our pick'ems, and we'll even give you some teams that are on upset alert.
And if you don't catch us live, you can download us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We do also have a YouTube station, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
So before we get to more Tyrese Maxey, just the official announcement. The Detroit Pistons stand alone as they lost their 27th straight game today. They just fell to Brooklyn, so congratulations, Detroit. Do we congratulate them or apologize? I really don't know what to do here.
Well, I mean, maybe apologize to the fan base, but look at it this way: you probably got a really good seat at the lottery, right? So.
Yeah.
The only problem is they're at the lottery a lot. They don't seem to get it right very often.
Yeah, they always seem to have the worst record, then always get the fifth pick. They always seem
right. Correction. That's a good point. They never get the number one. They never get the chance to get the guy. And that's what they desperately need. They need a franchise player who you could pair with Cade and make that your duo that you build around going forward. Now that's easier said than done, because if you look at their roster, it's full of guys who scouts thought coming out were franchise type players, and they're not.
Well, I guess as long as they avoid drafting another Killian Hayes, I think they'll be all right. But
don't get Killian Hayes. Don't trade for James Wiseman. Don't do stuff like that. Like
don't extend Marvin Bagley and then trade for James Wiseman.
Right. Like getting Wiseman, it's almost like getting Darko all over again. Except I'm not sure who's better between the two. It's close.
The worst part is, too, they had to trade Sadiq Bey, who would actually fit really well with what they need right now.
Well, Sadiq Bey can shoot. He can shoot. Like, why did you I mean, when you're building a roster, all I'm saying is I have to think that most GMs go, I need to put together guys whose skill sets complement my best players, right? That's all you can ask for just to start out with. But you don't put on the floor, I got a bunch of slashers, but nobody can shoot. And I'm going to put them on the floor. In this NBA where everybody knows if you can't shoot, you don't think they're going to play. They're not going to play you. They're going to literally give you 15 feet of space and dare you to shoot the basketball.
Yeah, I think the first move they got to do at some point is just fire Troy Weaver. He can't be the GM anymore after every compounding mistake every time we think he's done the worst move he could for the Pistons, he finds a way to one-up himself, and it's just almost incredible at this point. We got Key in the chat. Now, what's good, Key?
What's good, Key?
Kyle says, take a bow, Pistons. All they need is another Killian Hayes.
Yeah.
Get to 29, you will beat the Sixers.
That's right.
Pistons will win on January the 3rd.
Who are they playing?
Right. This was my first thought, too. But we'll look at that in a second. But we'll start the conversation. JJ Redick says that Mr. Derrick White is an all-star. And that is interesting to me, right? Like, I genuinely, what do you think, Mo? 'Cause I don't think he's an all-star quite yet.
You know what? It's funny because this particular season, at least up until this point in the season, I think Derrick White has out Drew Holiday. And I can see why you can make a case for them. Look, you're the point guard or one of the point guards for the team with the best record in your conference. I think Derrick White's averaging between 16 and 18 a game. Number one in guards and block shots. He's high in steals. He's an elite defender. I think he can make a case for the all-star team because you can look at numbers, right? A good example. We're both fans of Halliburton, right? But right now, Halliburton and the Pacers, they're going to be under 500. And so at what point do we separate the fact that, yes, the Pacers are entertaining and everything they do goes through Halliburton, but it's not generating wins. He is putting up monstrous numbers, but again, and I want to be clear because I am a fan of his, but the way they play, he's ball dominant. The ball is always in his hands. He will always put up numbers. He will always put up stat lines. Is it translating to wins? Because I thought last year he was worthy of making the all-star team. But if they're struggling and what he doesn't translate to wins and he's not actually making his teammates better, then a guy like Derrick White, who maybe doesn't have gaudy numbers, but literally impacts winning on both ends of the floor on a team that's winning, I think he should get some shine. I do. And I'm not saying it has to be at Halliburton's expense. It could be at another guard's expense. But I'm looking now, and you say Derrick White for all-star, he should get some consideration. But let's not front. We already know Tyrese Maxey's going to be an all-star, right? We can agree on that. Maxey's going to be an all-star. I have to assume Donovan Mitchell's going to be an all-star. I'm just thinking about the guards. I think Donovan Mitchell's going to be an all-star. I think Halliburton may still be an all-star even if their record is teetering below 500. And then you've got a guy like Jalen Brunson who's having a big year as well. I don't think it's crazy that Derrick White gets some love, but it's a pretty deep guard field, you would agree, right? Before he can leap through a lot of those guys. Like that's the challenge. Is he going to get credit for helping the Celtics win? Or are people going to go like, well, he's good. He's really good, but he plays with Tatum and Brown and Drew Holiday.
See, that's the tough one. And we're going to figure that out right now with me, you, and the chat, because we're going to play a little game called Derrick White versus. So we are going to compare him to the other options for All-Star Guard. And simply, you in the chat have to tell us Derrick White or the field. But before we get there, I thought this was an interesting look. Credit to my friend Gabe on Twitter. He makes graphs like this. This is showing Derrick White's impact. So on the left is when he's off the court. The Celtics are pretty much dead even offense relative to the dead even defense, relative to the league. They're 2 points better than league average on offense. With Derrick White on the court compared to off, though, all of a sudden you're looking at an offense that's almost 9 points ahead of the league and a defense that's 6 points ahead of the league. It's a 12-point swing in net rating. So, because I'm about to show stats, and they might not look as impressive, but I thought this would actually help Derrick White's case a lot.
I'm with you. I think he has to get consideration, even though he didn't have the most gaudiest stats.
Kyle Edwards said he voted for Derrick White. I'm sure his.
I'm shocked Kyle voted for Derrick White. I am.
Sure. Al Horford is on his ballot too, and Porzingis, and just the entire Celtics 1 through 6.
I would, like I said, I would show Derrick White some love. And Drew's one of my favorite players, but obviously to this point, Derrick White has had a better season than Drew has, so I understand it. Like you said, this is a great exercise. Now you're going to say Derrick White versus Maxey. Maxey's going to win that. It's going to be Maxey. He's not taking Maxey's spot.
No, absolutely. And I thought I'd start with the obvious ones where I don't think he wins. And so I started out with White versus Maxey. And I'm going Maxey as well with this one. But this just shows how he compares to Tyrese, which, he compares pretty well. Obviously, they have two different roles, but. And then, of course, next we have Derrick White or Damian Lillard.
I'm still going to go with Dame. I'm gonna go with Dame. If you can't beat Maxey out, you're not gonna beat Dame out. Like I said, the guard pool in the East. When you look at Dame and you look at Brunson, you haven't even gotten to Mitchell and some of the other guys. Like I think Derrick White should get some All-Star love. I just don't know who he would bump out.
Yeah, that's the tough one because I would go Dame too, even with his early season struggles. He's been picking it up as of late.
Right.
Went through a 3-game stretch where he averaged 37 a game, so he's definitely starting to find his rhythm.
And maybe if you just call Derrick White a guard, then it becomes easier because, not for nothing. I'm just using this as a hypothetical. Everybody out there in the chat, maybe Derrick White takes Jimmy Butler's spot this year.
I'm
just putting it out there. That would make sense to me.
Of course, we have Derrick White and Donovan Mitchell. And I want to reiterate, the point of this exercise isn't to rag on Derrick White or anything. The point of this exercise is just to show how tough it is to crack this East guard pool, right? So I think the answer right here is Donovan Mitchell. And this isn't anything against Derrick White, but a lot of people are calling him an all-star, not realizing how tough this East guard group is actually going to beat us. So get one of these, let's say 4 guard spots.
I mean, I would lean to Donovan Mitchell. Although, if you look at the Cavaliers and what people thought they were going to be, they seem to be struggling. And The funny thing is they were struggling this way the second half of last year, right? They came out the gate very fast. I think teams adjusted to them and realized immediately what they weren't good at. And what they're not good at is spacing. And it's because Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are both zero range players. You cannot have two zero range players on the floor, not in this NBA. It will not allow it. It will hurt you. It'll hurt you in the regular season. It will kill you in the postseason when the floor shrinks and it's about half court execution. I like Evan Mobley, but he hasn't developed into the kind of shooter that you would want for him to play alongside a guy like Allen. And Allen is going to do all his work, Brett, in the restricted area. It just makes for bad spacing because you're relying on Donovan Mitchell or you're relying on what's the other guard, Darius Garland, to break the defense down and create for everybody else. Because remember, they're the only two guys on the team that can create off the dribble for themselves. Karis LeVert can do it to a lesser degree, but usually when he creates only for himself. I just think that, because I know we kind of got off track about what we're talking about Derrick White, I just think that if you're a Cleveland fan, you need to make a decision on your roster construction. Either you go smaller and you start Mobley at center, which is very possible because he's really no smaller than Nicholas Batum, who starts for the Nets. Or you move Mobley, which I think I wouldn't do that, and bring in more of a stretch four, like a Porzingis type, to complement Allen. I just think right now, everything they do is iso ball. And if you're going to play iso ball, you can't have two guys that have no range on the floor. It just kills your spacing and your driving lanes. Sorry about that, everybody. We get off track. We're doing the Derrick White thing, but this is what we do sometimes. We kind of go off and get into a whole nother thing.
Hey, and you know what? That's something I said before the season, though, about Cleveland, because when we were talking about trade targets, I kept mentioning Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. Not saying both of them are going to go, but I think eventually you're going to have to pick between which one do you want to run at center and which one do you want to move for more picks or players. So let's see. And then we have here he is, Derrick White, Tyrese Halliburton. And by the way, we actually had Kyle say Derrick White over Damian Lillard.
I'm not mad at what Kyle is saying, and I'm not saying that Derrick White is better than Damian Lillard day in and day out, but within the framework of this particular season, I see Mitch putting up numbers. I do, but I don't see it impacting wins. And so, look, it reminds me. Maybe you can appreciate this, Brett. Remember the year that the Atlanta Hawks, they were really good. I think they won like 60 plus games. And they had like 4 guys make the All-Star team. And Millsap put up numbers. And I believe it was Jeff Teague put up some numbers. And I think Al Horford was on that team too, right? Did Al put up some numbers?
Yeah.
And then they had Kyle Korver. And look, I'm not hating on Kyle Korver. He's a great shooter. But the man only averaged 10 points a game. He don't play a lick of defense. And he made the All-Star team. So I'm remembering that to say this. It is very possible for Derrick White to make the All-Star team. He clearly will have done much more than that guy did to make the All-Star team. It is harder if you just get caught up in raw numbers. If you put Derrick White's numbers up against these point guards, and you can appreciate this because all the guys that we're putting him up against, they're not just point guards, they're scoring point guards. And I wouldn't say Derrick White is not a primary scoring point guard, right? We could agree on that.
Yeah.
He's not going to put up 27 like Dame or Mitchell or even Halliburton. So I know that the numbers games will always sway towards them. I think where he has a shot is, I don't think it's a secret that he's an all-NBA defender and he's giving you 16 points a game and almost 5 assists, and you are at the top of the Eastern Conference. So I think his biggest argument is his consistency on both ends of the floor and the fact that his team is winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I 100% agree with that. And if he made the All-Star team, I wouldn't be mad about it. I just thought this, like I said, this exercise, I thought it'd be fun to show you because a lot of people are just saying it. I'm like, I want you to really visualize this. I want you to see what the rest of these guards are doing.
Right.
And then make your assumption. It's just trying to educate people more so on what he's going up against and why it's not as cut and dry as a lot of people might think.
Just for the record, Halliburton's shooting splits are crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, so are Derrick White's, but Halliburton's not just your facilitator, he's your primary. 50% from the field, 41% from three is crazy. Look, Derrick White's no slouch, 49% and 42% from three. The difference, though, is Derrick White is the third option on the Celtics or the fourth option. Like Halliburton is not just the main creator, he's also the leading scorer. So he just carries a heavier burden. But I'm a big fan of Derrick White. So anybody out there listening, this isn't me saying like, oh, you don't think Derrick White is deserving. No, I'm saying he is, and I think Brett thinks he is too, but I think Brett is pointing out there is a logjam at the guard spot in the East, and these are some really, really gifted players. And maybe it's an easier decision. Let's say the Pacers aren't just a game under 500, but maybe they go 4 or 5 games under 500. That's different, right? That could swing the pendulum a little bit more. So I do think winning is Derrick White's biggest argument.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he is deserving almost in the same vein that, and like I said, same way almost Drew Holiday made it, even though he was only averaging 19, but he was playing such great defense, they voted him in. And like you said, there's been a lot of people that have been honestly definitely less deserving than Derrick White. You mentioned that 2015 Hawks team. I think everybody except Kent Bazemore made it. So it was Teague, Korver, Millsap, and Horford they brought to the All-Star game. And
what did they have against Bazemore?
I don't know. I think that was the funniest thing ever. But yeah, we've definitely seen All-Stars that were much less deserving than Derrick White. So if he makes it, I would not be mad. No, shout out to Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. Thank you for tuning in, sir.
What's going on? I think nobody will be happier for Derrick White if he made it than Drew Holiday, because I know the kind of guy Drew Holiday is. So I think Derrick White is deserving. I'm sure Cal thinks he's deserving. I'm sure a lot of Celtics fans thinks he's deserving. And let's just see how it plays out, because ultimately the coaches can decide to a degree, right? And I think that it's so loaded in the East. Somebody really, really good, somebody really, really gifted is going to feel snubbed when it's all said and done.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Kyle also put Luke Cornett on his list, so I know he's joking with that one. But...
Now I know Cal's bugging. Come on now. Come on now.
Didn't Jamal McClure make an All-Star team?
He did. Jamal McClure made an All-Star team, and I remember that was one of those where I was like, why did he make an All-Star team?
Mavericks legend.
I remember that.
And the last guy I had here, Jalen Brunson.
And again, it's very the matchups are all very similar because, like I said, these other guys, they're all better scorers. They're all primaries. And obviously we know that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the primaries for Boston. And I think you could say Porzingis is the third option. So maybe Derrick White's actually the fourth option. And this takes nothing away from how he's played, because I think he's played great. I'm with you, Brett. He's deserving. If he makes it, it would not shock me. But if he didn't make it, I don't think that would shock me either, just because how loaded the field is.
To be fair, the head coach of the East was, Coach Bud coached that team, so they just loaded
it was rigged. So it was rigged. Okay, rigged.
But yeah, that's our fun little exercise. Derrick White versus. Like I said, we're all big fans of Derrick White on this show. I love what he's doing, and he's got maybe the most underrated skill people don't talk about. We talk about underrated talents and skills. Portability, the ability to play with other stars, is maybe the most important skill that you can have. And Derrick White has that in spades. So
I think that's what makes Boston a legit title contender. That two of their four best players, they can take a back seat You know what I mean? Like Derrick White and Drew can take a back seat and do the dirty work. I don't think they lose sleep if they get 16 points one night, 11 points the other night. I just think guys like that, they help guys like Tatum and Brown win games.
Put Derrick White in the skills competition. I'm down with that.
Oh, yeah.
I would rather see Derrick White in the skills competition than the Antetokounmpo brothers again. Nothing against Giannis, but I really don't want to see Thanasis out there again and Alex and whichever brother he's going to bring.
Yeah, I like that. Put him in the skills competition. Like I said, Derrick White is an unsung, really good basketball player. I've actually been watching him since he was on the Spurs. I thought he was a good basketball player then, but I think he's finally getting a little bit more shine now because he's in a bigger market.
No, that's fair. All love for Derrick White here. Speaking of San Antonio, we have a former Spur talking about getting moved. And there's rumors that move could be to the Lakers. So Mo, you're a resident Laker fan. You're big on LA. Well, I'll ask you. This article I saw says that Austin Reeves and a pick could get it done. The question is Austin Reeves too steep of a price for you? Like how far would you go to get DeJounte Murray on your team?
So I know somebody gonna say I'm crazy, but I think it's too steep a price. But let me be clear. Ask me who's the better basketball player, Austin Reeves or DeJounte Murray. Of course, it's DeJounte Murray. But I'm looking at how the Lakers play. I'm looking at the Lakers' two best players and what their strengths and what their skill sets are. Austin Reeves right now is a better fit for the Lakers. Like, I don't doubt DeJounte Murray is an upgrade because he will give you a point of the attack defender. So that'll help and improve their defense. And yes, he's capable. He can give you 18 to 20 on a given night. But I would say that as a shooter, he's a lot streakier than Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves also has an ability to draw fouls. It's just a gift that he has. And he's got a knack for making big shots and big moments. So while I would be intrigued because the Lakers desperately need a point of attack defender, I think giving up Reeves is too expensive. It is. It really is. I know people are going to go, DeJounte Murray, Mo, what are you talking about? And I'm just telling you, don't confuse talent with fit. DeJounte Murray looks great on paper. Here's the problem, and it will always be the problem. And if Kyle's still listening in the chat or someone else in the chat, just hear me out. No point guard that's ever been a point guard has got to play. He's been able to play point guard when they play alongside LeBron James. DeJounte Murray is not a two guard, but if he plays with LeBron James, by default, he will become a two guard. If he plays with LeBron James, by default, DeJounte Murray will be in the corner waiting to catch and shoot. That's not his strength. That's not how he plays. That's the problem when you have a LeBron James team is point guard is a figment of people's imagination because everybody knows the point guard on the Lakers, it's going to be LeBron. I don't care who they name officially the point guard. The actual point guard, the guy that handles the ball, that runs the offense, is LeBron James. So if I know that ahead of time, why am I going to bring a DeJounte Murray in and hamper his skill set? Because I don't think him and LeBron would mesh. That I don't see how that would work. I don't see how that would work at all. Definitely not to DeJounte Murray's benefit. And if things go wrong, who's going to get killed? LeBron, AD, or DeJounte Murray? It's going to be DeJounte Murray. They're going to say he wasn't good enough, not ready for the big time, can't fit. I can see it ahead of time right now. So all I'm saying is if we're looking to add a piece to the Lakers, add a piece that fits off of LeBron and AD skill sets. Don't bring in a point guard because you say you want another facilitator because he won't get to play point guard. So I was saying fit matters. If you're trading DeJounte Murray and all we have to give up is D'Lo and somebody else, I do that trade tonight. Matter of fact, I will find D'Lo and give him a ride to Atlanta. We'll make it happen on the red eye. But if it's going to be Reeves, because we're already a team that doesn't have a lot of shooting, that's a high price to pay. You're already talking about a Lakers team that's not a very good three-point shooting team, and you're taking away one of your best shooters. And I know you might disagree. You might say, "Well, what Murray gives them defensively, Mo, will offset the shooting." It could, but what happens when they get in the playoffs and LeBron gets doubled, and the guy he kicks it out to is DeJounte Murray? I don't know if he's going to be the one raining down threes late in games. I've seen him make big threes, but he's like, again, we're talking about a streaky shooter. I'm only going off of what he's been over his career. Over his career, he's been a below average three-point shooter. Terrific player. And I'd love to have him, but not at the expense of Austin Reeves.
It's really funny because I looked at his 3-point splits from earlier, and I can pull up more graphs on 3-point shots. And I pulled one up for DeJounte Murray. He's shooting like 40% on tight threes and open threes, but 23% on wide open threes. It's the most insane thing ever. Like, the more open you leave him, the more time you give him to think, the more likely he's been to break this year.
But he's a lot more comfortable, Brett. Like I'm saying, like if he got the ball in his hand and he just pulls up from three, he shoots that a lot better. Do you know what I'm saying? With confidence. Yeah. With the ball in his hands, he's a better basketball player. The point I'm trying to point out is if you play with LeBron, he's not going to have the ball in his hands that often. He's going to be the guy in the corner that they're going to want to catch and shoot. I don't think that's his strength.
Yeah, because I agree with that. Because watching him, I just don't think it works because you don't have enough shooting. Every team's just going to form a wall at the rim and make you beat them from deep. And there's not enough shooting in LA so that Hawks need to trade Trae. I don't think that happens, right? Here's the thing about Trae. Yes, he's a terrible defender. Trae Young is also like, if you are building an offense tomorrow and you can pick from anybody in the league, if you have a top 10 pick, you're going to pick Trae Young to build an offense around. He is a top 10 offensive weapon in this league. So that's kind of the Trae Young conundrum. Like, yes, he is an awful defender, but he's actually been trying a lot harder this year. But more importantly, he's still such a devastating weapon on offense that it's kind of hard to move on from someone like him.
Let me ask you this, though, because this kind of goes into another question, right? We've been talking about it for the last few days or so. With Trae Young as your best player, can you win a title?
No, you'd have to load up the team like you did with Iverson. You have to load defense, and hope that Trae can elevate the team.
Right. And so we can literally do a show on, can you win a title with this guy? Can you win a title with that guy? Here's an example. Because I don't want to limit this. I love how sometimes our conversations can kind of evolve into another conversation, but
yeah,
I don't want to limit this to just Trae. I look at Zion, 6'5", 6'6", all that power, athleticism, potential, but I don't think you can win a title if Zion's your best player. I don't think so. I feel very confident and correct in making this statement. If Zion's your best player, you're not winning a title.
I think part of the issue with Zion too is I watched him a lot. Like, I started watching some of his high school game, right? And he was running a lot of like pick and rolls. Like, he was the primary ball handler. And when he went to Duke and now in the NBA, all of a sudden it seemed to like all of a sudden, all right, go down low in the post, like on the block. It's like Zion's at best, like he was at best like in like playing like almost like a guard in a 6'6" dude's body. Like, yes, he's bigger, but he's also got that athleticism that if you give him a pick and roll and he gets going downhill, it's almost impossible to stop. Whereas if you're just throwing him on the block, he can't get that momentum, and it just kind of severely limits him.
He can't shoot either, and that's a problem. Like, he hasn't developed any kind of jump shot. Like, when they played the Lakers, you saw LeBron guard him, and LeBron gave the man 10 or 15 feet. Like, he gave him that much space, literally dared him to shoot, and Zion didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do with the basketball. And I thought right then in that moment, that's why you can't win if he's your best player. Because somebody else that had that dog in him what they would have realized is if Bron's going to give me this 15 feet, I can either force up a shot that I know I'm not going to make, or I can close the distance between us and make him guard me going downhill. And Zion never thought to do that because he's got a lot of quit in him. He naturally has a lot of quit in him. I'm just saying, if you're a Pelicans fan, you can look at all the potential. In these years, they go by fast. You're going to turn around and wake up one day, and you're still going to be talking about what you could be if Zion did this or if Zion did that. I would move that problem onto another franchise while everybody else thinks so highly of it.
I would pay for the Uber to get D'Angelo to Atlanta just to watch him and Trae Young fail. Now, I think the guy I'd feel sorry for the most if D'Angelo went to Atlanta is Clint Capella, because that man's just going to get his cardio doing rotations after somebody gets blown by. Austin Reeves and or Max Christie is what Atlanta would ask for.
Well, they have Max Christie. I'm cool. But I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't give up Reeves.
Let Russell Westbrook be a cautionary tale.
Yes, Kyle, spot on. Even though their skill sets are somewhat different, look, bro, you gotta know. You gotta know who you're playing with and who you're going to play with. DeJounte Murray will be miserable playing alongside LeBron James. This is nothing against LeBron. LeBron plays a certain way. And unless you're a natural shooter as a point guard, even though they list you as a point guard, I don't know how much you can actually do for LeBron James, because LeBron is ball dominant. He will have the ball in his hands at all time. If you're a point guard and you play with the Lakers, you will no longer be a point guard. People always ask me, if LeBron and Chris Paul are such great friends, how come they never play together? And I think Chris Paul was like, if we're going to stay friends, we shouldn't play together. And that's why they didn't play together, because Chris Paul, I'm sure Chris Paul, like, I'm not a spot-up shooter, bro. I don't want to play with you. I'm not going to do that. That's not what I do. So I just think that it takes a certain skill set to play around him because he plays a certain way. And DeJounte Murray, you don't want that, man. You don't want that headache. I don't know where you're going to go, but I can tell you where you don't want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Paul just doesn't. I'm sure they could make it work, but that just doesn't seem like it's worth the headache to make it work, especially at this point. Trae is trying on defense. He will still crumble in the playoffs against bigger guards and athletic bigs who can switch on to him. That's fair. His game does have limitations, but I just still don't see a scenario right now in which the Hawks look to move on from him right quite yet.
No.
It could happen, but I just don't think right now at this moment they're looking to move on from him.
He's a draw, and they love him. And I'm not arguing that when you look at a guy that gives you about 27, 28 points a game and 10 or 11 assists, obviously an impactful, dominant offensive player. The problem is when you watch Trae Young play is I don't think he plays a style of basketball that's conducive to winning. I think that when we go back in time and look at that run that the Hawks had 2 or 3 years ago, where they ended up, I believe they got to did they get to the conference finals?
They got to the conference finals.
I think they got to the conference. Right. But even in that moment, as that played out, I was thinking, this isn't the beginning of a dynasty. This is a blip. And that's exactly what it was. It was a blip. Yes, Trae can put up 28 and 11 in his sleep. And it's not just about defending. Can he help you win? Because right now, he's fun to watch, and he keeps Atlanta just relevant enough to where people pay attention. But they added Murray, and that didn't work. And it's not like Murray became the problem. It's that their roster construction is so poor, not to mention when everything they do is all about what Trae Young does in pick and pop or pick and roll. Like, they run the same thing over and over and over. And they have enough talent to where the ball should be spread out a lot more, but they don't think that way. Quinn Snyder, who is a good coach, but he's bought into the Trae Young thing. He is Trae Young centric to a fault, and you're not going to win anything playing that way. You're just not. It's in the NBA that we're in now. I think we can agree. that there is no shortage of ball dominant players, right?
No.
You can say James Harden, maybe not as much as he was, but James Harden's a ball dominant player. LeBron's a ball dominant player. Luka's a ball dominant player. You can show me that he got 14 assists the other night, and he had 50 points. But he had all that because the ball is literally in his hands at all time. I'm looking at Luka. Love everything about his offensive game. Love his swagger. He's 6'7", 6'8", so he's a much bigger man. And yet I feel the same way. Somebody goes, well, Luka's one player away from going to the finals. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. Because if another star goes there and it's somebody who can score or do other things other than just play defense and rebound, I don't know how that works because Luka doesn't play off the ball very much. Like when Luka doesn't have the ball in his hands, what is he doing? He doesn't cut back door. He didn't do anything. So I don't know how you win playing everything through one person. It's entertaining, but I don't think you're going to win anything. Like when I look at the Mavericks, when they go, well, who's coming out of the West? Who's coming out of the West? But I know the Mavericks aren't coming out of the West.
Yeah, when Luka's not on the ball, he looks like he went to the James Harden School of Off-Ball Movement, where he's just being the most expensive spectator, just 30 feet away from the basket, just hands on his hips. Just
they're very similar. Actually, I can make the argument, even though they're very similar, Luka actually cries for more calls than Harden does. When Luka's off ball, I think he spends most of his time talking to the refs. Great individual talent. So I don't want nobody to get sidetracked.
Yeah,
but I question, can you win it all if he's your guy? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it will require some sacrifice from Luka if he wants to win it all. I just don't think you can dominate the ball like he does. Because, like, listen, James Harden was so dominant on offense, people were wondering if he was better than MJ on offense. He couldn't win it all.
And you're right. And Harden put up incredible stats. Nobody would argue that. And to his credit, I believe, as the best player on the Rockets, I think Harden made it to 2 conference finals, right? Maybe, or is it 2 or 3? At least 2. At least 2, maybe 3. But so he had a degree of success. He just came apart, though, in the bigger moments. I just think that's a hard role to take, to try to put everything on one guy's back and try to win that way. Like, I think you can win regular season games. I don't think you can win a championship that way.
No, I agree. Half the time, my most iconic Harden moment I remember is him getting blocked by Manu Ginobili to seal a playoff game. But he has its moments, just not consistent, right? Like we remember him blocking Lou Dort to seal their win, and then proceed to just disappear for half the next round. And even like 20, and you could argue the next biggest moment I remember from him, 2021 playoffs, Game 7 against Milwaukee. He hit a big 3 to put him up 5. But yeah, he's just a little too inconsistent for my liking when it comes to the playoffs. And Luka, he might be able to do it, but I'm just not confident in that style of play resulting in titles.
I think the next evolution for Luka, like you said, Brett, is he's going to have to find a way to dial it back a little bit and be more inclusive offensively with other guys. Trust that other guys have talent. Like, obviously, he knows Kyrie can get his own shot, create for himself. Everybody always wants to use the term big 3. I don't think you have to have a big 3 in today's NBA to win a title. It doesn't hurt, but if you got two legit stars at the top of your roster, I think all you need now is really capable guys around them whose skill sets fit around them, and you can win a title. The big 3 notion, it comes with a cost, because if you put everything into 3 players, as we're talking about right now, look at what that did for Chicago. It didn't work. Look at how that's playing out, or how that played out in Brooklyn. It didn't work. Look at how it's playing out in Phoenix. It didn't work. Now, it's for various reasons, but when you bring in veteran players that are on the other side of 30, over the course of a season one of them or two or three of them are going to miss time, right? Bradley Beal has been missing time for the better part of 4 years. So when they made that move, you had to know you were getting a brittle guy. You got who you got. I look at Phoenix and I'm like, I say they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. It would not shock me if they end up in the play-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem like that's the direction the NBA was headed. We went to the Big Three for a while because we had the formation of the Boston Big Three, so they had to counter that. But it does feel like the NBA has now realized that having two guys and just a lot of depth is just better than having a Big Three. We kind of saw that start up, I'd say, in almost 2019 when you had Kawhi Leonard and then Kyle Lowry and then Siakam. And then it continued the next year. You had LeBron, AD, and then your third best player was Kuzma on some nights, KCP on some other nights.
Right.
So I agree, and I think it's a great direction to go. It's something that I've always believed in too, that it's just better to be deeper than it is to just be top heavy, because it just seems like being top heavy for the most part doesn't seem to work out very well, unless you have like a prime LeBron James on your team or Curry.
But if you're top heavy in all three of the guys that you're talking about are on the other side of 30. Like in Phoenix, I think Booker's the only one that's not or he might be right at 30, but I know for sure, what is Bill, 32, 33, KD's 35 at least. Like father time will catch up to you at some point. I wouldn't have brought in Bill. I would have taken the assets I had and tried to build out my roster around Booker and Durant. I would have went with what you said. I would have went with depth. I would have took depth over name power.
Yeah, 100%. So looking at now looks how it's working out with Green, Clay, and Curry. Where are they right now? I think it worked out so well. I think that's another underrated factor too with these big threes, because quite a few of them these past couple of years, the successful ones, they formed when a couple of the stars were still young, right?
Right.
LeBron, Wade was still like at the tail end of his prime. He got like maybe 3 years of prime Wade before he started falling apart. We can just use LeBron to hop to Cleveland. Kyrie was still young. Kevin Love was young. Green, Clay, and Curry all developed together, and KD was young. And I think that's the part a lot of people are missing, because they'll put together a big three of three guys that are all past 30 that have been playing a certain way of basketball forever. It's not like some of these young guys where you can still kind of teach them a new way to play and they'll listen.
Right.
A lot of these guys, you put them when they're past 30, they're like DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Vooch. They've all been playing a certain way forever. Did you really expect them to change when they got together? There was absolutely zero shot that happened. So I think that's kind of an underrated part about the big three that people are missing. Just get young guys who are willing to sacrifice and like change up their style a little bit to actually work together.
Yeah. And get some athletic wings that can defend multiple positions, because that's what matters. Look, you need floor balance. And when I look at Phoenix, I'm like, what they don't have is they don't have a young player that's, say, 24 or 25 that could be an elite wing defender or a 3-and-D guy. That's something they desperately need. They're a small team anyway, but you can at least defend on the perimeter at a high level if you have the players to do it. That roster top to bottom, they don't have anybody that can defend. And like I said, Frank Vogel, he must have just really wanted a job really bad, because I would have looked at that team and been like, I'm a defensive coach, but the roster that we're putting together doesn't help me in any way.
When Kevin Durant is arguably your defensive anchor at age 35, something went terribly wrong. Like that's another staple of a big three. You have to have an elite defender somewhere in there. You look at 08, you had Kevin Garnett. The Heatles, you had Bosh, and LeBron James was defensive player of the year caliber. LeBron locked in the playoffs with Cleveland. You had Dre with the Warriors. Just any successful big three has a stopper. And this Suns team just has none of that. Which we will absolutely talk more about the Phoenix Suns in just a minute after one more quick word from another guys from some other shows.
Hey y'all, I'm Key. And I'm Jory, and tune in to Hoop Dreams and Touchdown Queens every Saturday at 5 p.m. over on Sports Empire Network.
And don't forget, also watch us on Roku TV at Northeast Streaming Productions. So tune in.
Of course, if you guys need some great content, Wednesdays, 5 o'clock. No, sorry. Saturdays. They're on Saturdays. Saturdays, 5 o'clock.
Watch the ladies.
Check out Jory. Check out Keith. They're a great show. I've listened to them on the car ride home. And if you need some quality content, absolutely check out those ladies. Now, we were just talking about Phoenix. It seems like the perfect transition to reports that Kevin Durant is unhappy. Brandon Jennings chimed in and said, KD should leave the Suns. They curse, man. He don't deserve this. But as much as I love Brandon Jennings, and I even wore the Jennings jersey today just because I knew he was coming up, I would say that KD almost like brought this on himself, right? To an extent. Like, he's the one that really just wanted to go to Phoenix. It was Phoenix or nothing. So he's the one that wanted to be there. Now, I do think that the Suns made some poor choices building a roster around him, like previously discussed with the Bradley Beal trade and even getting the oft-injured Nurkic. But what do you think, Mo? What do you think about this Brandon Jennings comment and KD being unhappy?
Well, KD should be mad at himself too, though. He's not playing that great. Not on the defensive side of the ball. Turns the ball over entirely too much on offense. And he asked for this. And I know I've heard people say, well, he wanted to play with Chris Paul. He did until he realized that Chris Paul was old and he was injury prone, right? And Chris Paul wasn't on the team in the playoffs because he was injured. And they decided to go in another direction, which I knew they would. They needed to get younger. What I thought they were going to do is go out and get younger bodies to make things easier for Booker and Durant and build the roster out. And what they did was they made a big trade to get Bradley Beal, but by getting a Bradley Beal, those 3 big contracts, now the rest of that roster is full of guys that are like, the league minimum. When you're getting paid the league minimum, you kind of get what you pay for, right? In the end, you get what you pay for. The roster is flawed because, look, there are guys on that roster right now you couldn't recognize in a lineup. You wouldn't know who they are. And I don't understand how you put that team together knowing you hired a coach who's known to be a defensive coach. It's his card in the league. It's his lot in life as an NBA coach. You would go out and get guys that are 3D, like maybe a Grant Williams or somebody to that effect to complement a KD and a Booker. You need stoppers. You need guys to do the dirty work. And I look at that Phoenix roster, the closest guy that you could say even is somewhat like that would be a Grayson Allen. I think Grayson Allen is a very good role player, but he's not the solution they need as a whole. This is just a very flawed roster construction. And I think KD's getting upset because here's the reality, Brett. He's 35. And this will be another year wasted. I think KD wanted to compete for another title, right? I'm sure he wanted to get in the finals and compete for another title. I hate to say it, and I'm not advocating for it. If he plans on competing for another title, it won't be in Phoenix, which is even scarier because now you're talking about a guy who's on his 4th team to move on to a 5th team. And at some point, his value is going to decrease. It just is. I thought the best place for him to go at this stage of his career would be to go back home. I thought he'd be better off going to OKC. Even though it's a younger team, he could go there in a different role. Still a star, but that would be Shea's team. And KD would have been playing off of Shea, which I think could extend KD's career a few years more because he wouldn't have the responsibility of being the guy. He would be the guy beside the guy in a veteran role. And I don't know if KD can do that or he could take himself down a notch and go, I understand it's SGA's team and I'm just here to help him win. because that to me would have been the better fit. That would have been a better, even if they don't win a title, him going home, helping the Thunder be relevant or even compete for a conference title, that would be a better ending to his career than what's going to happen in Phoenix.
100%. And it's tough, right? Because I definitely don't think they are even considering moving on from him. And I think an interesting follow-up question, let's say theoretically KD does leave. Does Devin Booker want out after that? Because now you're left with Kevin Durant, whatever you get back in a trade for him. But you also have, $250 million of Bradley Beal and aging Nurkic and a bunch of vet minimum guys? It's not like, even just with him and the Beal contract alone, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. So I think that he won't get moved. And I think a big part of that is they think there's a real chance that if you move KD, Booker will be like, yeah, I'm not staying here. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, and I don't think Phoenix is ready to move KD unless he's making demands and it's becoming drastic or something like that. And I've heard nothing to that point. When you're talking about all-time great players and how their careers end, or you remember those. And to me, KD should just man up and make the best of the Phoenix situation because they can still be a relevant basketball team. They could be, really. And maybe the front office could come up with a move to where they could bring in an athletic wing or something to that nature. Maybe they're very active going forward in the buyout market because the buyout market is something that gives everybody an opportunity to get a come up. I'm just looking at KD thinking, this is your fourth team at age 35, and it's not a very good team, but it's not KD should leave the Suns. KD signed up to go to the Suns. KD wanted to go to the Suns. Now he's there. It's on him as a star and as a leader on that team to get the best out of his teammates that he can. And for him to play better as well, because I've seen him play good against bad teams, but I've seen him struggle against the better teams. So he needs to play better. And so does Booker.
Yeah, absolutely. Damian, thank you for joining us. He says KD should go to Miami or Denver if he wants to win another championship.
Denver.
Denver is it's interesting. It might work, but you're playing Aaron Gordon on a position at the 3, and they try that in Orlando, and that's awkward. But there is a lot of spacing, so maybe it works out anyway.
And right, but the Denver thing is kind of crazy because who's he going there for? Who's coming back in return? Porter Jr. and who else? Right, because you're going to get multiple bodies. If you get KD, are you going to lose 2 of your starting guys?
And here's the thing, right, with Porter Jr. and thing you got to watch out for with trading with Denver. I remember a story of a long time ago when they brought up to Larry Bird about making a trade with the Cavaliers when he was the GM of the Pacers. Bird told him, or the coach of the Pacers told him, be careful. LeBron makes those guys look a lot better than they are. It's the same thing with the Nuggets. Michael Porter Jr. is not the same player without Jokic. He does not look that great without Jokic. So I think there would be a legitimate concern coming from Phoenix. Like, we can trade for MPJ, but if you watch him without Jokic, he looks really lost at times. So I guess the question is, do you think you can pull out some more self-creation or whatever you expect out of him? Because Denver hasn't been able to quite yet.
And look, let's be realistic. I don't think Phoenix or Denver's pursuing KD or anything like that. No. When Denver's right, they've got the best starting 5 in basketball, arguably. Right there with the Celtics, the Bucks. I would say if they have a weakness this particular season is it doesn't have the firepower that they had last year coming off the bench. And that could be a weakness unless they rectify that. I just look at Kevin Durant and go, he's going to have to make the best of the situation in Phoenix because Kevin Durant at 35, I don't think nobody's going to give you multiple number ones for a 35-year-old Kevin Durant.
No, that was definitely the last big Kevin Durant trade. I believe anything else, he probably still gets maybe a 1 or 2 first, but I think none are the days where he's getting you 4 like he just did for Phoenix. Kevin Durant on the Pacers. I don't think that helps the Pacers. Obviously having KD helps, but that just takes their strength and makes it even more of a strength without really addressing their weakness. And I don't know if KD's ready to run with Indiana. Like, that is a very fast team.
Well, they run a lot, and he doesn't move that much. And what would you remember now? You're talking about a trade. What is Indiana giving up? Like, almost you're gonna gut your roster. What are you giving up? Mathurin, Neesmith. I can go down the list. Like, but by the time you're done, it wouldn't even be the same Pacer team.
No. You know, it's funny. I saw a really hilarious article on the Pacers, and I could tell this was a Pacer fan because I was like, there's not a way you're arguing this. So if you watch a lot of Pacers games, you'll realize that Buddy Hield will actually play a lot of defense on power forwards and bigger guys. And I see a lot of Pacer fans coming out, and somebody wrote an article saying, oh, it's because he's so versatile. And I got a kick out of that. I'm like, no, it's because Buddy Hield can't guard anybody that's quicker than him. So he's starting at shooting guard. But every single point guard, shooting guard, and small forward is too quick for him. So now they have to compromise their entire defense by putting Buddy Hield, who's 6'4", onto this power forward. Because anywhere else, he's just such a liability. So honestly, I think if the Pacers really want to contend, they're going to have to seriously consider upgrading from Buddy Hield.
I actually agree with that. I've never been a big Hield fan. I think they have to upgrade from Hill, but I also think that they have to find more floor balance from their team. They are fun to watch. They play with a lot of pace, but they're only competing on one side of the floor. And they don't have to be an elite defense, but yet you have to at least put in the work to make your team a middle of the road defense. You have to be able to at some point get a stop here or there.
Put KD on the Hornets, got some talent there.
What? He said.
I mean, I think they have the perfect salary filler, right? And Gordon Hayward. Like, you can send out Hayward to match salaries, but I really don't think that KD would be particularly thrilled if they just came in. All right, you're going to Charlotte.
I think he retired. I think he would retire on the spot. And let's be realistic. Why would Phoenix ever do that? They could do a lot of things, but why would you make that trade to get back Gordon Hayward and some dudes? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, so some trades are realistic and some trades are like NBA 2K live trades. That's one of those. Phoenix is not making that trade because nobody wants. I would want Gordon Hayward on my team. In a situational role because I think he can help you, but you're trading Kevin Durant for Gordon Hayward and I don't know Miles Bridges or something crazy like that. I wouldn't do it.
KD would rather go back to college and play for Texas.
Right,
than play for
right. He would retire before he played for the Hornets. Come on, man.
Maybe he still has a couple of years of eligibility. We'll never know, right? I do think the Hornets have something good going on. I like their forward wing group they got going on with Miller, Bridges. They got a good center, LaMelo. I think they're building something good there, though. I'll give them some credit. So, but alas, that is all we had for today. Mo, is there anything else you'd like to discuss or bring up, sir?
No, good conversation. You know, we're talking hoops. We can kind of drift to the left or right, but we usually make it back to the center. But no, I enjoyed the whole conversation. The great thing about the NBA is a lot of the buzz is speculation, and a lot of us fans, we live for that kind of speculation because it makes for great conversation. So DeJounte Murray maybe goes to the Lakers or DeJounte Murray goes to another contender. It'll be interesting. I do think that the Hawks, they don't want to do a rebuild, but I do think they're trying to reset to some degree.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And I've always enjoyed talking hoops with you. And I definitely enjoy the show when we can talk everything from current basketball and, talking about guys like Gerald Wallace, Ricky Davis, Kevin Johnson.
Right. Who's going to talk about Gerald Wallace?
I absolutely love it. the show always keeps me on my toes, and I have to be ready for just any name. So, and of course, for the chat, we had Kyle, John, Damian, Key, and everybody in the chat. We appreciate you. We're going to
Appreciate you guys.
We're going to keep working. We're going to keep grinding to bring you the best show possible every week.
No doubt.
This is Guardy3. That's Mo Betta signing off, everybody. And I hope you guys have a happy new year.
Talk to you.